Hi, Dad.
Hi, Aurora.
So we're here. You're down for a visit, and you've asked me to edit a book. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that book.
Well, the book is called Quantum Culture in the New Humanity, Visions of the Future.
Okay.
So I'd love to tell you about the book, but first of all, I think it's important that we kind of like set the force field here. I mean, I'm in your pad and the energy's good and all of that, but I want to bring in a few good angels and energies to kind of set the foundation. Is that all right?
I've got some sage. Do you
Oh,
want to
okay,
bring
that's
sage
good.
into
Yeah, it
it?
smells good in here. Well,
Okay.
let's bring Jesus in.
How do we bring Jesus in?
Well, we'll pray to Jesus.
Okay.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Okay, how about Buddha? Let's bring Buddha in.
Okay.
Om Buddha, Om Buddha, Om Buddha, Om Buddha. How about Krishna? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Well, let's bring in the all-powerful oneness Om.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Jesus wants to say something too. No, Buddha. No, Buddha says it's more important. Well, if I'm going to talk about my book, who do we let talk first, or who's more important? Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Mohammed? Who's more important?
They're all important, right?
They're all important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you where that's the point of the book. The book is called Quantum Culture. And if we want to define quantum culture, we look at the meaning of the word quantum. We look at the meaning of the word culture. So quantum is a way of quantifying energy. It's a way of measuring energy at subatomic levels, atomic levels. And so obviously indicating that there's a way of measuring energy which has become quantum physics outside of the physical domain. I mean, that's a very general, broad statement of quantum physics. But if you mirror that and match that to culture, you ask the question, well, what does culture mean? Well, culture comes from the word, the root word "kalere," which means to cultivate. So the question becomes, what are we cultivating in our society, in our world? Right now, most of us are aware of something called pop culture, popular culture. What makes it popular and why? Well, we know that pop culture is those things that stimulate our senses and they entertain us. So culture generally is those systems, structures, rules that we abide by, we live within, and we get entertained by.
All based on the material plane, right?
All based on the material plane, that's correct. So we bring the word quantum in, so we're bringing in something higher than the material plane. So instead of having a culture based on the lower level or just the material plane, now we're bringing the new scientific principles to talk about a new culture and incorporate those new paradigms into the culture. Hence the word quantum culture. And by doing that, if we bring in the new paradigm and call it quantum culture, well, there's going to be a new humanity, because we'll have to reevaluate and redo all of the systems that we operate under right now. Educational system, the arts, all of the systems. And another thing about culture is it's those things that are generally of the arts, meaning music, meaning art, writing, poetry, those things that generally stimulate us and entertain us. So generally speaking, those things that are entertaining us now in the physical, on the physical plane, in the physical world, are those things that just simply titillate and stimulate our physical senses. We have spirituality, we have religion, all vying for the position to be the number one leader of our belief system. So hence the beginning. I mean, we have all of these different belief systems. We have all these different ways of praying to the belief system, the force of the belief system that is predominant in our culture. So the visions of the new humanity are, imagine having a culture that's based on multi-dimensional reality, on the higher physics, and incorporating these higher physics into our everyday world, into our educational system, into the different aspects of society. So that's why I wrote the book. The idea of spiritual culture has been a very important aspect of my thought patterns for the last 20 years, especially since I was involved in esoteric studies. Now, why have I pursued it? I pursued it because I learned about a body of information back in around 2008. And the material is called the Wingmakers material. And within this material, it's a large body of information. But within this material, there were certain concepts and ideologies that kind of were tools, for me at least, to take that idea of a spiritual culture, quantum culture, to the next step. For instance, one of the paradigms of this would be called quantum presence. And in the esoteric studies that I was involved in, we always knew it as the I am presence. And so we have the quantum presence, we have these different concepts that came through this information of the Wingmakers.
Can you define them though?
Define them in what way?
Well, what is the I am presence, and what is the quantum presence?
Well, I think instead of going there, I think let's kind of move into what the different points that I put into the book that relate to quantum culture. Can we do that, or what would you like?
Sure.
It's your video. We'll do whatever you want.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, well, quantum presence, I mean, if you think about the idea of quantum presence, what does that mean? We had the I am presence, which was a way in which you linked up to your higher self. Okay, so quantum presence, it connotates a higher degree of a link based on the scientific principle.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Is it kind of like seeing your presence, but in a multidimensional way?
I think that's a really good way to put it.
Okay.
And so imagine if we all walked around, no matter what belief system we followed, but we all understood that we have a quantum presence. And one of the key aspects of the Wingmakers material that has led me along this path of developing this idea of quantum culture is working with what's called the 6 heart virtues. Working with the energetic heart. And this is actually one of the things that really got me involved in the Wingmakers materials, because I started studying these materials on the energetic heart. And so there's several e-papers that are available on the Wingmakers website that clearly outline and define the energetic heart, living from the heart, a guidebook called the Wenwich How Practice Guidebook that really is the basis, at least for me, as far as how I could write a fantasy novel, which is what this book is. It's a fantasy novel based on the ideologies, concepts, and information that I had studied in the Wingmakers material.
Okay. So that's sort of what brought you to quantum presence? And is quantum presence therefore like arrived through the heart? Arrived through the heart?
I think the quantum presence is always there. We can get into a really deep dynamic discussion of how to arrive at the quantum presence, but I think we're all doing that, and that's part of our job. What we need to do is we need to activate into the quantum presence, and that's the beauty of the Wingmakers materials, is that their activation techniques and tools and activators, I don't know how else to put it, that stimulate you into sort of vibrating into that higher awareness. And that's done through the use of sound, through the music. The Wingmakers has a whole gamut of music that people have used to stimulate their different levels of their being into the higher domain, multi-dimensional reality, so to speak. And so this individual, James, he's a translator, claims to be a translator of this material. And this material is solely designed to bring us in to a new higher culture. And so for me, it really resonated because I could see the need many, many years ago for a spiritual culture. So I was walking around, and you might remember as my daughter and as a young girl, how I would talk about spiritual culture.
Yeah.
And I would talk to a lot of people about that, but there was no real foundation for me to latch onto. You had all of these different belief systems, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever these things that we were into, I was into at the time. They're beautiful belief systems, but in one sense they're separation. And quantum culture, if we get at that higher level, is one at that level. And although all religions and all these belief systems will tell you that, it really doesn't get there. And the question becomes, why doesn't it get there? And I think that was my disconnect. And that's why I was searching and trying to figure out, well, we have Buddhism, we have Hinduism, we have Christianity, we have all of these things, but we don't have that link. What's that link? And that link, to me now, as I understand it, at least came for me through the study of this material, the Wingmakers material, is something called the wholeness paradigm.
Okay.
So you can be in whatever belief system, whatever scientific endeavor or philosophy, but you can follow a paradigm, you can follow a way in which you can become whole and connected excuse me, connected to your quantum presence. And ultimately that happens through your heart. Not through the mind, not through the intellect of understanding all of these different belief systems and mental cogitation of this information, but it happens through the heart. And so the 6 heart virtues is a way in which you can access that portal of your heart, get beyond whatever separation there is involved within the belief systems, and access that through your quantum presence. And to me, it's actually quite simple. So a person can be a Buddhist, they can be a Christian, they can be following whatever belief system, but if they're accessing the heart and working with the energy of the heart, that's the key. So that's the linking. That's the link from all the different religions, the belief systems, the philosophy. The link is through the heart, and then working with the heart. So in a quantum culture, you'll start to realize that we're all one, we're all linked through the heart, and this is what this creator of the Wingmakers, James Mahu, talks about. And that's what I found very exciting. And so in my own personal study of the material, my activation came about very strongly. And what happened is that all of these concepts and ideas of the Wingmakers were inspiring me in different ways. So what happened was that the idea, actually, first of all, it started out, the book itself started out as just simply processing the information myself and taking a different category or a different idea and aspect of the Wingmakers and writing about it. And what happened was it became characters, and it became kind of an adventure between myself and my imagination and the presence, so to speak, in a play, a dynamic play. So what would happen is I would sit down and I would write. I'd take a concept, an idea, and I'd start this storyline, and then it became this bigger storyline. And then the characters developed, and it became what it became.
So in a sense, it's kind of taken the Wingmakers material and your creative experience of it and made it into something very feasible and kind of real for people, right?
Well, for me, feasible and real for me, and I think that's the key, Aurora. The key is that if someone gets involved in material like this and an activation material like this, and they self-activate, it's not about a guru or a person helping you or doing it or whatever. It's about you taking the material, not about me telling you or anybody else telling you. It's about simply,
well, like as a demonstration then, or sort of like an example, or just something that could can or will or will not inspire others, because it's the information and then a story put together.
Absolutely, for sure. And I think it will inspire us, and I think that's the point. And that's the point of what I'm trying to say here, is that I got inspired. And I know that many people who have studied this material have gotten inspired. And I happen to be just a guy that got inspired and wrote some things down and finished this thing off and said to my daughter, here, you want to edit it? And here we go. And here we are. So to me, ultimately, it's not about the book, the fantasy novel, which is what this is called, a fantasy novel, which is a spin-off of the Wingmaker concepts, which I believe Darlene Burgess has said that this is just a natural evolution of the material. People will get inspired, they'll get creative, they'll write poems, they'll do this and do that, and that's all part of the journey in consciousness that we undertake. So for me, it's been a wonderful journey in consciousness, and will continue and is continuing, and for other people it will begin and continue. And this material are the activation sources, at least for me. So it's not about the book that I wrote. It's not about me telling anybody, hey, this or that. It's about people getting a hold of the material themselves. And that's what I would suggest. Maybe what we could do is I actually brought some material down here that we could go into that to me would be much better if you're going to do anything with this video for people to look into, other than for me to sit here and say, hey, look at this. I'd rather see them look at the same material that inspired me.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would like to do.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
I just want to add, though, with the sense that you've written the book, and as Darlene said, that it's going to inspire other people, is a perfect example of the Wholeness Navigator, right?
The wholeness paradigm?
The wholeness paradigm.
Yes.
Yeah, of that unity in consciousness, and how it's just like going to reach all of these people, and it's like you're inspired, and then someone else is inspired, and it's like, you don't like in your body know the people or whatever, but it creates that chain, it creates that stream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful way to put it.
Yeah.
And I think that you put forth a concept, the wholeness navigator, and we got the wholeness paradigm. There's all of these different concepts, and I think it probably is not a good place to go over these concepts right now. People will be able to explore them themselves. Or maybe what you could do is you could start doing some work with these concepts yourself and start working with younger people to explore them in a greater detail. I know that Darlene Burgess and it's recommended that people get involved in Wingmaker study groups and discussion groups online, event temples, and all of these different other resources where they can do that. And to me, I think that's what's so exciting to me, is to see you, my daughter, 24, involved in this material. And since I've been here and I'm starting to learn that a lot of young people are just itching and desiring these activation materials. Two young people just within the last day I've talked to that are really excited about this. And so anyhow, I actually, Darlene Burgess gave me some, actually a copy of the interview that James Mahu did with her.
Okay.
Her, of course, with Planet Work Press, and then James Mahu. And what I think would be really neat to do, because it's so filled with great information and kind of gives you a trajectory of where everything is going, plus gives you a good definition from James Mahu's own words on what the books are about. So I put a copy up there. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you grab that? Why don't you ask the questions that Darlene has asked, and I'll read the answers that James Mahu gave, and I think that this will be the best possible explanation of the material.
Okay. Sure. Do you want me to read the title as well, or?
Sure. Read the title and ask the question, and I'll answer, and maybe do a commentary or two if I feel inspired to.
Okay. So, what we're going to read is A New Journey in Consciousness, which is an interview with Wingmaker's creator and author James Mahu by Darlene Burgess of Planet Work Press. Alright. As the visionary creator of the Wingmakers and related websites, novels, visual art, philosophical papers, poetry, and music compositions, how are you able to tap into the vast and varied creative energies required for all of these diverse works, which take us on a new journey in consciousness?
Well, in answer to that question, James Mahu says, when I was young, when I was still in my early teens, I had a vision for how multimedia could be applied to the conversation of consciousness. Conversation of consciousness. You see, most art does not tackle the subject of consciousness. Excuse me. But rather the artifacts and antecedents of consciousness. In particular, social consciousness. Social consciousness is largely programmed consciousness. Artistic words, regardless of their medium, generally revolve around this aspect of the human journey. For me, I wanted to delve deeper into the actual substrate behind the controlled aspects of social consciousness and the artistic expressions that would help people have internal and external conversations about the subject of consciousness. It wasn't enough to crack the outer appearances of consciousness as espoused by the intelligentsia, religion, or even metaphysics. I wanted to look into the origins, the bedrock from which consciousness emerges. Art and mythology are among the best methods to catalyze these conversations and inspire people to look deeper behind the facades that have been built by human hands and have stood for so long that they have taken on an authority that few people will dare question. Art can ask those questions. Mythology can expose the deeper aspects of consciousness in a manner that science and religion will allow, because myth is perceived as being based in the imaginative, collective consciousness and is not owned by anyone.
Your first book in physical print is The Dorman Prophecy, which takes place in a mystical forest. In the chapter titled Virtues of the Heart,